Welcome, everybody. I'm really excited today. This is workshop number 14. Ty, can you hear me okay?
I can.
And you can see everything. Great. Okay. We have lots of people checking in. So welcome, everybody. Thanks for spending your Saturday morning with us. Um, let's see if I'm going to now share the screen. Let's see why it's coming up.
I can see it.
You can see the presentation. Oh, there it is. Okay. And let's start. We got the recording going. So we are good to go. So welcome. We're going to get started. We have lots to cover. Again, this is session 13. You're welcome to uh, look at any of the prior, listen to the prior recordings. We have them all hosted on the website. And for those that can't make the workshop, we had some people that signed up that weren't able to attend. Some things came up. So we told everyone the same thing that we will send a copy of the recording to everyone that wasn't able to attend. Those on the call, we assume you're somewhere here. If you want to use the chat function or the Q&A, we will. No, we have a bunch of participants. Okay, some more signing on. Wonderful. Welcome, welcome, everyone. So everyone on the call is somewhere usually here, but Ty, we've had people from Canada, we had people from Europe. Again, it's for people that are generally in this, southeastern Pennsylvania marketplace, but they're listening for a family member, trying to give them some good advice and some help. So we're going to start a little bit my introduction. I am Brett Furman. I've been a real estate broker serving the suburban Philadelphia marketplace for the last 37 years. I wrote a book, same as my guest. I don't know, Ty, can you see my book up on the screen?
Yes.
Okay. And our guest also has a book. We have a lot in common. When I introduce the guest, you'll know why. Um, I do a lot of speaking around the country on real estate and technology. I've been featured in lots of magazines and publications, writing all about real estate. On the call might be some of my associates. They're listed here. We have Brent. You know what? I think I need, let me bring up I have a laser pointer. Now, can you see the laser pointer? Um, so
Yep.
some of my associates are listed here. Samantha, Michelle, I'm not sure if they're on, but if they are, they're listening. Samantha, I think, was going to be on. Now to our speaker and our guest. Um, I'd like to introduce Ty. Ty has a very similar background to mine. What I found, Ty, was we both started out in the financial world. You were at Vanguard. I worked for SEI Financial Services. So those two companies used to share and people would move around in that industry and end up at one of those two companies. We
Very true.
also both have our MBAs. You're from Penn State, mine's Drexel. But the real key to what we both have is we both wrote a book, which is interesting. So Ty's book's right here, and those on the call, you will get a copy of this. You're going to get at the end, you'll get a survey and you will get a copy of Ty's book. But there's also a way, Ty, if I'm not mistaken, to get another version on Amazon. Is it a hardback or a softback?
It's a softback like the one you have.
Like the one I have in my hand. Okay. So if
Yeah,
you
which is
want,
great because
and
it's, a short read. It's a little over 100 pages. It's not overly academic.
okay. And what's great about Ty and his speaking today is our audience, Ty, as you know, is usually people in the transition stage who are thinking about next chapters and moving from one house to 55 plus type community. So we're going to kind of tailor this really for that audience today. Um, and then I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the home concierge. Everybody on the call, or for those that missed the call, don't forget you have access to the home concierge. This is a free service. Anyone on the call, if you need a handyman, a painter, a plumber, a carpenter, an elder lawyer, an elder care financial planner. Okay. Um, we have those resources and we're happy to refer them to anyone you need. We have all kinds of resources. I'd like to also, before we jump and bring on Ty, I wanted to share something that's so relative that happened this morning, and that was I received a text message, or it's either a text message or an email from a client, and it was actually an email. I'm trying to bring it up right now. And basically, here it is. We talk in this workshop series, Ty, about proactive versus reactive planning and how that's so important and why we recommend being, proactive, right? Doing things in advance, setting your financial house in order and all. Um, this was a message that came in where I'm working with a couple, and this is a quote from this particular future home seller. Your assistance in the process has been invaluable to me and my mother during this difficult time. I remember what you said about acting versus reacting. The fact that we are in the reacting mode has brought many valuable lessons that I will share with others. This is a situation where I've been working with this couple and things change, right? Someone's health change. In this case, her father just recently sadly passed away, so they need to be more reactive, figure out where we're going to place mom. So this workshop series is very helpful for that reason. And I want to bring on our guest, Ty, now, who is going to talk to us about how how does financial planning impact senior housing and lifestyle options. So, Ty, why don't you take it over and start the dialogue going? And those on the call, don't forget you can drop questions. We already have a Q&A. Someone just hello from Texas. So hello. As you can see, Ty, they're all over the country, so that's awesome. So,
Yeah.
but again, keep the Q&A going, keep the questions. It's awesome. So, Ty, tell us a little bit about, I guess, about financial planning, how it impacts senior housing and lifestyle options.
Yeah. So it's interesting because one of the things that normally comes up when I'm dealing with people as they're thinking about retirement, and one of the questions I always ask is, well, where do you plan to retire? Where's your family? Because a lot of times people want to be close to their family. And if their kids have moved and they've been in the house where they've raised their family, then a lot of times moving is one of their top priorities. It's, they want to get out of the workforce, they want to be closer to their kids, their grandkids. And so looking to see, okay, well, what does that mean? Means a lot because for some, it's okay, well, I'm going to downsize my home, maybe move from a multi-level floor to a single floor home. And, a lot of the conversations that I have with clients is, well, how old is the oldest person that you know? Because if we're having this conversation in your 50s or 60s, but your family has a long longevity and tends to live into their 80s or 90s, well, the conversation isn't just about leaving the workforce. It's also about making sure that the house that you're going to get into evolves with you. So are you going into an independent living situation? Are you going to a 55 plus community? All of those things are important. Are you going to live in just an apartment, or are you going to live, or are you buying a home? So finding out all of those emotional things and figuring out what it means for them allows them to then make the most informed decisions. Like you talked about being active versus reactive. And I love
Yes.
that because when you are in the active planning process, whether it's to buy the home or your finances or your taxes or whatever, now you're able to understand all of your options. And once you understand all of your options, you can make informed decisions and know that even though I might make this decision right now, it doesn't mean that that's the one I have to live with the rest of my life. I can always sell the family home, move, and then if I need to move again, downsize or move to a different situation. And so having that flexibility goes a long way. I kind of tell people that financial planning is like your GPS. You know where you're starting, you know where you want to end, but along the way, you're going to have turns and reroutes and things like that. And so you should be flexible enough
And Ty, I
to
just saw a
move along that
question
way.
pop up. And I don't know if it's probably not a good spot, but I just saw the question. Someone asked, are you going to talk at all about any types of insurance um, the various insurances available for housing?
Well, I mean, I when it comes to insurance, it insurance is an interesting thing because there's so many different types of insurance. There's so much that can go into the different policy types, whether it be a long-term care policy.
That's what it was long. They were asking about LTs. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
looking at the abbreviation, so it's long-term care. Sorry.
No, it's okay. So one of the things with long-term care policies is that a lot of the companies that were in the industry 10, 15, 20 years ago have gotten out of the industry because they underpriced their policies years
Mm,
ago and found that they had to start increasing the rates on their people to levels where the person who owned the policy couldn't afford it anymore. And so a lot of times what you're finding more are more hybrid policies where you have a chronic care rider maybe wrapped on a life insurance chassis. So now you have the benefit of if you need to access it for long-term care, that's an option. But if you never need the long-term care, you still have the life insurance component. And so it gives you a little bit more flexibility when it comes to how you're using the insurance itself.
okay.
But with every insurance policy, whether it's an insurance policy, life insurance, or an annuity, it's all about the contract and the terms and conditions. So I always tell people, make sure you understand what you're buying because there's a lot of acronyms out there, but one insurance company's product is one way and another insurance product for the same category is completely different. So
Okay.
really understanding what you're buying goes a long way.
So the next part, Ty, is what we're going to talk a little bit about is what should a healthy retirement plan include? Like, what do you recommend for that?
So with every financial plan that we ever do at our firm, we start with the goals for the client in mind first. And while that might seem like a given, it's not necessarily a given. We're a fiduciary first. And so we always have to look out for our clients before we start recommending products or services. And so that puts us in a very different mindset when it comes to what we're going to recommend. Because you know, even something as simple as when should I take Social Security or when do I file for Medicare or do I buy a car? Do I lease a car? All of these things have impacts both in the short run and in the long run. And so being able to really understand what you're trying to do goes a long way in helping your advice that we give you. And so I would say that a healthy retirement plan would include options that you understand. And so everybody, when it comes to the core competencies of being an advisor, being able to manage the portfolio or sell insurance or whatever it might be, you kind of expect advisors to do that part.
Okay.
What makes the good advisors to separate them from maybe the salespeople are they're able to go above and beyond the transaction to really talk to you about, okay, what's going on in your family? Who are you planning for? Who's important in your life? Are you looking to retire? You're dealing with the loss of a loved one. What's all the paperwork that you're going to have to do? Let's explain everything that's going on so that now when you have to sit down and go through emotional points in your life, you know that you have someone that's there with you along the way. And so I think that just understanding is really what makes a healthy plan. It's not about the pretty charts or anything like that. It's really about knowing what you're trying to achieve.
So the real question comes in is, and I hear about this so many times, are the mistakes, right? People that either don't get the proper guidance, do a do it on their own without, help and whatever. Um, so how do you like evaluate everything to know really what's in your best interest?
So some of the red flags that are easy to pick out, I would say, are in the industry, a lot of people are taught this one meeting close, where the goal is to have you sit down, talk to you for an hour, and then get you to sign up for some type of product or service. Well, I don't know enough about you in an hour if we just met to really be able to give you a true piece of advice. I can sell you something, yes, but I really can't advise you if I've only known you for an hour. Even if it's, maybe we talked for 15 minutes on the phone, then we sat down in my office for an hour, and so being able to identify those red flags of, am I trying to promise you the world? There's no one product out there that is the buy all end all, that the golden apple that's going to solve everything. And so if I can help you understand, okay, here's some of the red flags that are out there. Now I can say, okay, sitting in this dinner presentation, the person's scaring me about the Great Depression. Okay, what if that happens to me? Okay, well, the Great Depression was almost 100 years ago, and so, but we're still
Relatively, there's
using
yeah.
this same example of, well, what if it happens again? And like, well, there's a lot of things that have changed over the last 100 years. There's a lot of regulations that changed. Social Security wasn't even a thing 100 years ago. And so, where we're at as a country, and where we're at as investors, where we're at as when it comes to access to information is so much different than where we were 100 years ago. Um, that I would say ask questions, ask for a second opinion. I actively encourage people who sit down with me, listen, go talk to someone else. If you have an advisor and you want to stick with them, I'll give you my opinion and you can stay there, um, because it's about what's in their best interest. It's not about selling something. And so if you're getting good advice, great. If you're getting bad advice, if you have to question it, maybe get a second opinion. You know, you don't go to a doctor that specializes in heart surgery if you have a problem with your foot. So, you mentioned that we all have family and friends. My neighbor might be a great guy, but if he's, I don't know, a teacher, I'm not going to ask him to help me build my portfolio. So he may have gotten lucky. So, just talk to a professional, Google them, find out if they have any marks on their record.
You're kind of I think you beat me to my next I'm sorry, I went the wrong direction, but I think my next question was how do you find someone you can trust? And you just basically said like, interview them, check Google ratings, that type of thing, get recommendations from friends, family.
Yeah, if they're licensed to sell investments, so stocks, bonds, mutual funds, or to charge a financial planning fee, then they're going to be registered with FINRA or the SEC.
Okay.
And so you can go to BrokerCheck, which is a free available website. And so for anybody who's licensed with a series license, like the Series 6, 7, 63, 65, you can look up their information and it'll give you their history, and it'll also tell you if they have any disclosures. Now, all disclosures aren't bad. You may have, excuse me. So like when I was younger, had a credit card that I completely forgot about that I signed up for in college, didn't know anything about this credit card because, I'm 47 now. They finally tracked me down in my 30s and was like, hey, by the way, you had this Discover card from 1997 that you never paid on. I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. But I said, okay, well, they said, if you give us $600, it'll go away. So I gave Discover $600. Well, that was something I had to disclose, that I made a agreement with the creditor to pay a lower fee.
Huh.
So, it's out there that I have a disclosure, but I can easily explain it like I just did. But the person, if you have a disclosure, should be able to tell you what it is. They should be able to tell you why it is. There are, like I said, not all disclosures are created equal, but we have to disclose them. It's part of our regulatory system. Um, Also, when you ask someone, I encourage everybody, ask the person you're sitting with, how do you make money? If they hem and haw or they are evasive about the fee that they're charging you, find someone else. I mean, it's a simple question. How do you make money? I make money three ways. I make money by managing your portfolio, by charging a percentage of the assets under management. I can make money because the insurance company pays me a commission if I sell an insurance type product. Or three, I make money by being introduced to other people and growing my business. It's that simple. There's no confusion. I'm not obfuscating. But then there's sometimes you ask someone, how do you make money? Well, it really, I'll explain it when you sign the paperwork, or, well, it really depends. And like, well, which one is it? Like, it's not that simple, but because different products pay different commissions, I might, if I'm not a fiduciary, might put you on a product that's going to pay me 7%, where a fiduciary might put you in something that is only going to pay them 1%. And so that's a big difference in how much money the client gets to keep in their pocket. And so understanding where you're at goes a long way. And so as transparent as someone can be, that's how you can know that they're trustworthy. And I think sometimes you can feel it. At least the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. If you're a couple and they're only talking to one of the spouses, I think that's another thing. I was at a conference for financial advisors not too long ago, and they told us how 80% of spouses actually fire their financial advisor after their husband dies, because the wife
Whoa.
never liked the financial advisor. The financial advisor was always the husband's guy. He spent most of the time ignoring her. And so when he died, she said, I'll find someone who trusts me and talks to me and listens to me,
Huh.
and you're gone. And
Interesting.
so treat the couples as equal. And regardless of who has more money and stuff like that, they both have something to contribute to the conversation. So make sure that they're both part of it. And that will go a very long way. And
I see in what I'm dealing with typically there's like a family, there's kids and spouses and things. How often do you get the children involved in the process? Is that something that would occur typically or
it is. It is. It is. And it's funny because, one of the things that we do for younger clients is to talk to them about how to prepare their kids as they're growing up. And for our older clients, one of the things that we talk about is during the estate planning process, communicate with your kids, tell them why you're making the decisions. Even when it comes to my own parents, when we were going through their will and everything, it was, listen, okay, this is fine. You can make me the executor, but explain that to my brother and sister why you're making those decisions. Tell them what your will says. Tell them why you're giving them what they're getting. And so that there are no surprises on the other end. So what I told my parents were, your kids as well as we know each other. So if one of us is going to fight over something,
okay.
have the conversation while you're here and can still mediate, because that's been your role for our entire lives, versus having us fight because you didn't explain it later and you're no longer here. So having those conversations and having the group and having the family does go a long way. And having someone who is outside the family kind of walk them through and talk to the kids and the parents in like a family meeting also goes an extreme long way. And clients really appreciate that kind of
Probably one of the
going above and
hardest
beyond.
situations I'm faced with on a daily basis is I'm working with a whole bunch of different clients, and they've been in their home for many, many years. and it's long past time to move. But they get so overwhelmed with, you know, what to do with all their stuff, and they just kind of shut down. And
Hmm.
unfortunately, when I talked in the beginning, when I read you that email I got this morning, that I see that so many times, something happens suddenly, and there is no plan in place, and we're scrambling now to figure out where people are going to go. And I deal with this. It's the most frustrating part of my job. Any advice on in the planning process, how we could do a better job with um, the senior clients?
So I think with the senior clients, and your home, especially if it's the one that you've raised your family and you've been in it for decades, it's almost part of your personality. And when I'm talking to them ahead of time, I'm always asking, what are you thinking about for the house? And most of the time they have no idea. But by having that conversation with them almost every year, it helps when we get to that point and they're like, you know what, I think we are going to downsize, because it's not like we're waiting until that trigger point of, oh, well, the husband or the spouse died or the wife died and the husband's
Okay.
left over. And so you're having that conversation. For me, like I've had this conversation for a decade with some clients, and we started in their 50s. And yes, now they're in their 60s and approaching 70. But it's one of those things that we've always had. And now the kids are grown and out of the house. And now they're starting to ask themselves, this house is way too big for us. And so it's that drip of, okay, you're in it, you're in it. And so what I would say is, because you have your clients that you're selling houses to in their 40s and 50s, also say to them, hey, listen, this doesn't have to be your forever home, and so as your life changes, I'm still here for you. But when you get the elderly client, a lot of times it can be a little bit more difficult because, you know, it's the house that they've always known. But when you ask them, so how easy is it for you to continue to maintain this home? Are you struggling with that? Let's talk about the emotional part of it, because your family is still around. And so you can still take your memories and stuff with you. The home is not, they say the home is where the heart is, but your heart is going to go with you.
Hmm.
So, and so you have to acknowledge their pain, their confusion, their reluctance, and then also give them a path forward that helps to say, okay, well, let's find a place where your family can visit. Let's maybe have an extra room in that if you're moving into a senior living so that your family can stay if they come and visit. Let's make sure that we have a place for your house or your cat or your dog. And so you're addressing all of the concerns while also helping them to plan for that big move. And so it's always a difficult conversation, even if it's just from a financial planning perspective, or in your case, when it's like, okay, we need to sell this home. Um, and it's always sad where the person says, well, I don't know if I can afford the home if something happens to the other spouse. And then it's like, okay, well, we don't want you to get to the point where you're making a decision out of panic. Let's have a mindful plan in place.
One of the things I really enjoyed, Ty, is you wrote this book, and I found it really interesting. What I wasn't expecting in the book is you got into a lot of other areas, like the various susceptibility of senior population to being taken advantage of, right? You mentioned a whole series of different things, which I watch for that stuff every day, and I see it so many times. So I thought your book was really, really well done. And I'm gonna jump to my next slide in a second here. I'm trying to watch the questions. Again, if anyone has any questions and they want to uh, jump in, uh, feel free to do that with questions. Let's see if did it move to the next? Are we in the next slide? Just trying to get down there. Sorry, I got so many things open on the screen this morning that it's Okay. There we go. And let's go back to so let's talk. You can see we have the book giveaway, right? You can see all that.
Yep.
So one of the things we said is those that are on the call, and there's some people, we have some people that are outside of our market area. We had someone this morning from Texas on. Um, but we said those that are listening, those that couldn't come, will get a copy of your book. It's a fairly quick read. It was about 112 pages, but you really went through a lot of information, a lot of things I didn't know about, and I found it very useful. So that's something we always try to add value. So those on the call, those that couldn't make it, will be able to get a copy of your book. So that's a very nice offer, Ty. We greatly appreciate that.
Oh, my pleasure.
And we're hopefully people will get the benefit of it. Um, oh, I didn't want to jump to I wanted to talk. We had a question that came up. I can jump into the questions and keep the questions coming. Was what makes working with a fiduciary different from other financial advisors? Could you talk a little bit about that again?
Yeah, absolutely. So, a fiduciary is someone who legally has to put your best interests ahead of their own. And while you would think that all financial advisors should put your best interest ahead of their own, it's that's not necessarily the case. And so, and part of it is in the type of license you have, and part of it is how you approach the market. But a fiduciary really is someone who is probably going to charge you, it's going to be fee based. So either they might charge you a flat fee for financial planning, they might charge you a percentage of your assets that they manage for you.
Hmm.
But when they come up with your financial plan, a fiduciary is going to look and say, okay, here's where you're at. Here's all of your options. And here's what's in your best interest. And if a commission-based product is in your best interest, here's why that's in your best interest. Here's the disclosures. Here's all the information you have to know. And so most
Hmm.
fiduciaries are not going to be able to do all of that in like that one meeting close that we talked about, because they need to overcome the just the basics of, is this suitable? And so there's two standards that advisors are held to. One is the suitability standard, and the other is the fiduciary standard. Suitability standard says that at the time we do a transaction, my recommendation is suitable. You said that you needed safety. I recommended a safe product. I've met my goals. Here's your transaction. I get my commission and I'm out. Where a fiduciary
Hmm.
standard says, okay, you've told me that you want safety. You've told me that you have a long time frame. You told me that you want to make sure that you have liquidity, but you also told me you want to make sure that you keep up with inflation, and you also want to plan for taxes. And so we're going to talk about asset allocation along with asset location so that we can make sure that you have the right combination of stocks and bonds and annuities. And we're going to talk about making sure that that combination is in the most tax advantaged places so that maybe the stocks are in non-retirement accounts, the fixed income or bonds or whatever are in IRAs, so that we're minimizing the tax impact down the road. And so now you're getting a lot more information and you're able to make a more informed decision. And I
Okay.
can't do all of that and like, oh, well, we just met. You told me X, Y, and Z. I gave you a questionnaire. You answered it. It said this is where you're at. And now we do the paperwork. You know, if I sell you on fear, you're probably going to make future decisions based on fear. If I scare you into thinking you could lose all your money, then when the stock market is down, you're probably going to want to sell. Where the stock market's very counterintuitive. You want to buy when the stock market's down and sell when it's up. But if I scared you into buying, you're going to be scared when you sell. Versus if I explain everything, you can make an informed decision. So that's really the difference between a fiduciary and the just a salesperson.
We had another question that came up, and the question was, and I'm trying to see if I can paraphrase it, if you will. Um, and this was from a senior client who's listening today, and they wanted to know what are like the common mistakes that the senior population makes that you've seen in your experience.
So I don't know if seniors make any more mistakes than anyone else.
Okay.
What I would say is
Okay.
that
That's good.
where seniors have to be more careful of is making sure that you have a trusted contact on your accounts. And the trusted contact is the person that you name, so that if your advisor starts to notice that maybe you're starting to experience dementia, or there's some questions about your health, that the advisor has someone that they can reach out to. What I always try and do for my senior clients is reach out to that person years in advance before we're in a problem, so that, hey, I've introduced myself, we're having a good conversation. I wanted you to know who I am, so that if I notice this in your parents, that this isn't the first time I call you and say, hey, I was talking to your mother today and it seemed like her speech was slurred, or she really couldn't understand what we were talking about. I don't want that to be the first time you talk to me. And so having that trusted contact is a really good step. For some of our older clients, it's easy for them to get taken advantage of, because senior fraud is really a big target. Because for some seniors, maybe their family is further away, maybe they're living on their own, and so they can be more susceptible to different types of fraud. Um, but know who you bank with, know their processes, know things like that will go a long way to help you to avoid some of those scams. One of the things that is really big right now in the community, and it affects everybody, it's not just seniors, is fraudsters are spoofing the phone numbers for banks and calling and saying that I don't know, TD Bank, and I'm calling because we recognize fraud on your account. Well, one of the things I suggest is, if you get that phone call, like I got the phone call from American Express. Now, American Express calls me routinely for stuff like this, but what I always do is say, thank you for calling, and then I immediately call the number on my card back and say, is this real? And then they'll confirm it. And so you can do the same thing with your bank. Oh, thank you for alerting me to this. Hang up and then call the number that
Call them
you call
back
all the
and
time.
verify.
And if they verify and say, yes, we have this fraud on your account, then you're not being taken advantage of. But then if you get it and you call them and say, oh, I just got this phone call, and they say, no, we don't have any fraud on your account, then you can talk to them about mitigation steps. And so
I
that's the thing I would always suggest.
I read a recent article and it talked about the quantity of fraud in Florida was like the highest in the country.
Yeah.
Um, it was like staggering how much fraud occurs, and I'm assuming the correlation was the numbers of senior residents, and maybe there's more financial fraudsters down there than anywhere else. So,
Yeah. And the thing is that most of the fraudsters aren't necessarily in the state that you're in.
yeah.
And so now, granted, most senior fraud is done by a family member. They get access to your social security check, or they get access to your bank account or something like that. So the vast majority of fraud is actually from someone that whether it
Huh.
be a caregiver, a family member, a friend. So that's the vast majority. However, the frauds that are the most kind of dangerous outside of that are the ones where they're gaining access to your accounts. You've clicked the link, they're spoofing different things. They're targeting you in different ways that makes it seem like what they're asking for is legit, but it's not. And so, but both are dangerous. Um, and unfortunately, with senior population, if you're dealing with diminished mental capacity, they're a little bit easier to target versus, and they have more money. Let's be honest. I'm not going to target a 20-year-old who, can barely buy a car, where a retired person may have a large portfolio as a fraudster. And so they're a right group. The baby boomers are, as of 2030, every one of them will be over 62. And the baby boomers are also the yuppies of the 80s, so they have more money than most other generations. They have more money than the generation before them, and they have more money than the generation after them. And so they're the prime target if you're looking for finances.
We've seen the fraud actually accelerate, and we're like super careful from our home sellers when they're receiving proceeds from the settlement or sale of a property, and people try to, hack email accounts and
Mhm.
send notices saying that, oh, the location of where you need to send money has changed, send it here, all those kinds of things. So we've stepped up like all our processes to make absolutely certain if someone's getting funds, it's only done with wet ink and notarization and original documentation, and nothing happens over the phone, and it's done in
Yeah,
person. Um, but we're super careful because there's just these frauds just keep going. But in your book, what I found is you covered pretty much everything. The phishing, the personal protective measures, the spoof bank calls were in there. You had the romance scams, which are interesting,
yeah,
and the prints, and you had the exploitation of finance manipulation, the robocalls, which those things are just, I don't know if there's an end to the robocalls. They just seem to keep coming.
yeah. And what I didn't even cover, but it is more relevant to like your industry, is the amount of title fraud that
Yeah,
is
title.
happening these days. And at least in Delaware County, Pennsylvania, I know that you can go to the county clerk's office and set up an alert so that if anyone does try and change your title, that you get alerted. And I don't know if every county does that. I don't know if every state does that, but I think it's something that should be more common, that you can set that up, because it's a little too easy in some ways for someone to change your title without you knowing it, and you've owned the house, and then next thing you know, you have an issue. And so, you know, I didn't cover that because I don't know as much about that, and it's obviously not something that impacts a lot of my clients. But I think from your perspective, I think
Yeah,
you could
it's
probably talk to
huge.
that even more,
Oh, it's
because it's a
huge.
growing thing. Yeah.
And unfortunately, I wish I could say I haven't seen any of it, but I have. And it's I don't think it's going to ever go away. I don't think we'll ever stop. I don't think you'll ever be able to stop it completely, but if you put your checks and balances in place and you're vigilant, you can significantly decrease your opportunity for having any kind of issue. So
Yeah.
watch for that. And it's funny because Ty, one of the people experts, I always look for people to bring on my monthly webinars. As I said, we've done this is our, I believe it's our 14th one. Um, is we were looking for someone, actually specifically we're looking for someone like from the FBI or something. So if anybody knows anyone that could talk to us specifically about senior fraud, looking for an expert for that, for a future workshop. So I'm just putting it out there just in case someone listening knows somebody for that. Uh,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, so we have a bunch more questions. I don't want to do too many of the questions right now. But I guess let me see what I wanted to see if we could maybe do a wrap up, if you will, and that is, what do you think those on the call? And again, we have people that are all over geographically, but again, most of them are in this Northeast corridor. Um, Anything you'd recommend for our listeners that they could do today that would help them, give them some kind of peace of mind in the future?
So I'm a big believer in knowing your numbers. And what I mean by that is, know how much money you have coming in, know how much money you have going out, have a system in place One of the things I always tell my clients is that life happens between your annual meetings. So, you know, don't don't wait till your annual meeting that I reach out and proactively set up
Okay.
for you to reach out. And so my clients take me up on that. I've had calls from people who are sitting in car dealerships thinking about whether they should lease or buy their car. I had a person call me once from a timeshare down in the islands. Um,
Uh-oh, timeshares,
and they
that's a
were,
hot button for me. Okay.
yeah. And they were sitting in the timeshare presentation and they were like, okay, Ty, you know our financial information. What should we do? And it's that ability to pick up the phone and call someone, I think gives them that peace of mind that even though it's not stuff I do, I'm obviously not a timeshare salesperson. I don't sell cars, but my clients know that if there's a dollar figure associated with what they're going to do, they can pick up a call and just have the conversation and bounce the ideas off of me. One of the conversations I recently had with someone, they were like, I have this financial advisor. We kind of he inherited us because his father was our advisor for a number of decades, but then the father retired, so the son took over the practice. But now we're talking about doing taking Social Security. And so we asked him, and his response was, "Well, go to the Social Security Administration." And I was like, well, yes, I'm not going to be the one to sign you up for Social Security or to sell you the Medicare, but I can talk to you about why you should do this or why you should do that. And having an advisor that goes beyond just the portfolio of, okay, we should rebalance your portfolio this year, or, oh, you should buy this annuity, or you should buy this life insurance product, goes a long way to making clients feel confident that in their worst moments, if they lose a loved one or they're dealing with something, that they have someone in their corner that they know they can turn to and say, hey, this is going on. What should I do? I need your help. And that they know that you're going to be there. And I think that is the kind of peace of mind that you can't find from everybody. But if you can find an advisor who has a high emotional intelligence, it goes a long way.
One of the things that I really enjoyed in our conversations, we were on much earlier today, before everyone signed on. And I was talking to Ty, and what I found out was Ty shares a very similar trait in the way you work, and that is your access. It seems to me that if I heard correctly, that you were you've gotten calls from clients and you're even on a vacation, but you always took the time to respond. And that's been my secret sauce for 37 years. In fact, I think we just wrote an article about that in one of the trade journals. And we talked about the importance of, something as simple as answering the phone and talking to your clients. And I think that is probably also, is that part of your secret sauce, would you say, to success?
It is. There was that point where you could put even the robo blockers and the spam call blockers on your phone. And I had that for a while, for maybe a couple months. And then I started realizing that one, it was blocking people from being able to get a hold of me if their phone number
Okay.
wasn't in my phone. But just answering the call, yeah, a lot of the calls I get these days are from people trying to sell me on using their product with clients. But a lot of times I do get calls from people who are saying, hey, so and so told me to run this by you and to see what you thought. And because it's something where I can do my job from anywhere in the world, it's great because there have been times where I've been traveling with, my family and been in Italy or England or Jamaica or wherever, and I've been able to answer the phone. Or I've been at a conference in Austin, Texas or Arizona, and you know, and it doesn't hurt to answer the phone. It's something I'm trying to teach my 21-year-old daughter. It does not bother you to answer the phone, just or respond to a text message. I know you read it. So just replying does not go anywhere, or it's not going to be the thing that's going to tip you over. And a lot of times when it comes to the professionals that we recommend, like you, we were talking earlier, is that, listen, if you're not going to reply to me and I'm trying to send you clients, then I'm definitely not going to send you clients because you're not going to reply to them either. And so it's not that hard to just reply to someone, even if you're just saying, listen, I'm about to board a plane. I'll get back to you. The plane lands in 8 hours. I'll get back to you sometime after I get settled on the other end. Or I'm on vacation. I'll forward this to my team. They'll take care of it and let you know. You know, the good thing is I'm not an island. You know, there's a whole team of people behind me that work for me. There's institutions behind me that support us. And so leaning on them allows me to do the things that I do both professionally and personally with my family. But communication's big, you know, they say it doesn't hurt to be nice. It also doesn't hurt to respond.
That's awesome. I'm going to talk to everybody on the call as soon as I can get my computer to wake up. Those on the call, you're certainly welcome to connect with us, follow us, like us, watch us. We do a whole host of, besides just the ABCs of senior housing, and that's a monthly workshop. And again, they're all available on the website if you wanted to listen to some of the prior recordings. Some of them have been, watched hundreds of times by different, people or those that couldn't make our meetings. But the other reason to follow us is we do a lot of other things, like we do some charitable things. We do a lot of client giveaways. So we do our annual Thanksgiving Day pie giveaway. It's one of my favorite events where we give everybody um, these huge apple and pumpkin pies. We do a Mother's Day flower giveaway. We do a whole host of other things. So um, definitely follow us, like us, stay connected. I wanted to tell people how everyone could reach you, Ty. Is this the best way for people to reach you as far as do you like email? Do you like calls? What's your preferred method?
So I always tell people my preferred method of being contacted is your preferred method of being communicated. So you can call me, you can text me, you can send up a smoke signal, just let me know that we're using that method. Put up the bat sign, I'll be there. Whatever you need, whatever works for you. All two of those phone numbers go to my cell phone. The email goes to my cell phone. If you go on our website and contact us there, that goes to my cell phone. So there's really not a time that I'm unavailable unless, I'm in the air. But even then, as soon as I land, you'll hear from me. So, um, yeah, but that is definitely all my contact information. And so,
Okay. We've had some more questions, and we had someone that asked the question about Social Security, and they wanted to know, is Social Security on the chopping block? What do you know? Is it gonna be around? What's happening with Social Security? I know it's probably a hot topic, but that was the
yeah.
question.
Well, let me check my Twitter feed first to see what
Okay.
may have come out. Um, so, so there's terms used in Social Security that mean one thing and that mean completely different things in the rest of the world. So things like bankruptcy. Bankruptcy for most people means that the company, the business, the money is no longer there, it's gone. But when it comes to Social Security, what they're referring to isn't that the system is going bankrupt, because the system is set up that everyone who's working pays the payroll tax, and then the payroll tax money comes in, and then it immediately goes back out to Social Security citizens. And so what they're actually referring to is that after World War II, you had the baby boomers. And once the baby boomers got to working age, you had so many people paying into the system, but so few people receiving the system that they had excess money that they knew that they were going to use when the baby boomers reached retirement age. So they created the Social Security Trust Fund so that the money would be there, would get a small rate of return, but it would help when those baby boomers reached 62 or 65 or 66 or 67 or 70 or whatever their age is. And so that trust fund is being used because the baby boomers added into it, and now they're receiving the benefit. there's no account with anybody's name on it. So it's not like, well, my social security is going away. No, it's just one system. But for the first time ever, a couple years ago, the millennials actually became the largest living generation.
Yeah.
And so as the baby boomers and the war era generation um, citizens start to die off, you still have five other generations who are working. And so you have Gen X, and we're starting to reach 60. You have the millennials who are just reaching 40. You have Gen Alpha or whatever they're calling the kids that were born
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
2000, you know. And so you've got four or five other generations who are still working that are paying into the Social Security system as the baby boomers are getting smaller and smaller. And so the system's not going anywhere. Even if they do make changes, it won't be for people who are in or receiving Social Security. Most likely they would do what they did before because they've made changes to Social Security in the past. They would say if you were born in this 10-year period of time, your new retirement age is X. So if you were born in 1950 through 1960, your retirement age is 66. Anyone born after 1960, your retirement age is 67. They would do the same thing for younger people, and they would just delay us getting there. But for people who are getting it, no, you're fine. You know. Plus,
That
baby
was an
boomers vote
awesome
at a rate
answer.
record that no one else does. So,
Uh,
it's career suicide for a politician who are also on Social Security, most likely to vote to end something that
And it,
their block votes at a higher level than anybody else. So, but yeah,
Ty, my only question before we wrap up today, is there anything that you want to share with the audience? It was like a takeaway you think that would be valuable for those on the call or those that are listening to a future call?
what I would say is that when you work with someone like myself or Brett's team, find people who are going to help educate you on what's going on. Education is big because then you can make informed decisions. It's the reason why I like your team. Samantha, I love her.
Yeah, she's awesome.
Michelle is
Yeah,
awesome. Your partners are awesome.
yeah.
Will and everybody, your brother is great. And every person I've ever met from your team and your family members and stuff are all just great people to be around. And you can feel that when you're around them. And so I think when you're finding those professionals that exude the level of caring that you and I do, it helps the people who we're working with to know that they're being taken care of. And I think that goes a long way.
Awesome. Well, I'm very grateful and I thank you very much for spending your Saturday. It turned out to be a nice Saturday. I don't know, it's maybe rain a little bit later today, but we're very grateful. And for those that are on the call, remember that there will be a survey that will come to you, I think, when the call completes. And there also will be sending a copy of Ty's book, which is right here, which is a fairly easy read. It's around 100 and I don't know, 112 pages. Also, those on the call, if you want to get a copy of my latest book, um, that I'm really, this is my second book. This is The Only Way to Sell Your Home. And it covers all the latest and greatest of what's happening in real estate. And every time I finish one of these books, things are changing even as we speak. So there will be probably a third book soon that will talk about some of the most recent changes that I can assure you. But if you want to also listen to any of the previously recorded ABCs, they're on the website. You can go right here, and you're welcome to listen to them. And again, and those that couldn't come, we'll be sending them out shortly. You'll be getting copies of today's workshop. So thank you again, Ty. Again, thank you very much for your time. I got a lot out of this. I learned a lot, especially the fiduciary part. I really enjoyed that part a lot. So thank you for spending your time and thank you everyone for listening. So have a great day, everyone.
Thanks for having me.